Hi, my name is William. Today we're going to be talking about, we're going to be finishing up my thoughts about Plato's The Republic. I wanted to, first of all, say thank you for everyone who watched the previous video. I hope you found it enlightening. I hope you found something worthwhile. And if you're here again from the previous video, thank you. Thank you so much. I do really appreciate you putting value into the things I have to say by watching it. So, without further ado, let's get into my thoughts. I'm going to move my coffee cup because I realize it's a little bit in my way. Um, okay, so last time we were talking about. I redrew some of this just so it's a little nicer. Last time we were talking about my critique of capitalism. The second point was deception. Something I wanted to talk about though was that I missed out on was that we only talked about being on the receiving end of deception, but there's actually a secondary effect of deception in capitalism, that being the deceiver themselves, right? And so the deceiver themselves is interesting in that they can be very efficient in a capitalist firm filled with other deceivers. A capitalist firm has like a big advantage to filling their firm with a bunch of deceivers because all of the deceivers intuitively know that everybody else in that firm is trying to deceive them. So all of their influence by using falsehoods propagated as truths, right? Is focused externally from the firm, meaning that firm can compete in an economic market based off of influence at a really like prominent rate, right? And so, how would I put this? That's why you see sometimes in capitalism these like firms that are just like fucking evil. I won't name any, but I think we all have an idea of what I'm talking about, proliferate and succeed so well, right, is because they are just constantly pumping out falsehoods as truths. Now let's talk about the idiots. So I do sometimes get sidetracked with the idiots because the idiots is, I think, a more complex phenomenon than the other two. So the idiots is essentially, and I'm going to use bubbles for this. The idiots is essentially the idea that in life, people overestimate the amount of truths that they know, right? So, but first, let's outline what a person knows, right? So, I think when we think of intelligent people, at least our perception of them, this is like the perception, right? Our perception of intelligent people are that they know a lot of truths about the world, and then they hold some opinions about the world, right? If you're intelligent, then you have opinions and truths. I think this is the perception, and I think it's the perception because when it comes to actuality with an intelligent person, they know far less truths about the world. So this is the reality, right? But, however, I think what ends up happening is that we only see some of the truths that they do know. People will only tell you some of the truths that they know, right? Let me make it like a bit easier, right? So people will only tell you some of the truths they know and some of the opinions they have, specifically for the reason I outlined in part one, right? Is the fact that they don't want to anger people, they're risk adverse, right? So this is, I think, what we really see, and these are all the truths and opinions they actually know, right? I think, though, that what ends up happening, at least for the individual, right, is an individual who is intelligent can sometimes overestimate the amount of truths that they do know, right? I do have like a little anecdote that comes from a research article I'll talk about later. But for right now, if you just bear with me, I think that what most people, what is going on? Where's my, hello? Oh, I bet it's something to do with this. Yep. I think what people end up doing is they overestimate the amount of truths that they do know. And so I think that when we see an intelligent person, especially a very confident intelligent person, they can propagate their opinions that they think about the world as if they were truths, and they can do it at like a very high rate and in a very confident manner because they feel like they know those truths are to be real, right? And so I think I want to talk about, we'll just talk about the research article, right? So I read a research article, and it was a big deal when COVID was first coming out, right? Where essentially you had people who have PhDs and master's degrees, right? And then you have like bachelor's, associates, high school, and then like not high school educated, right? And so these people, it were like taking the COVID vaccine rate, or like accepting the COVID vaccine rate from their like occupations at like 30% or something like that, which is like insane, right? Because people with bachelors were doing it at like 70%, right? Or 80%. It was something like that. It was something weird like that, right? Where there was this huge discrepancy between these people, and then like, you had like 70 and then like 60. It was something like this, right? And what I think was happening, right? I think generally, and you can see this in real life all the time, is that they were estimating the truths they knew about the world. Now, I have some misgivings about the COVID-19 vaccine. I won't get into them here because I think that intuitively end up in a bad position, because you are either like far on one side or far on the other with the COVID-19 because of how polarized of an issue it was. But I think what was happening with PhD and master people, and the reason, or master people, masters holding holding academics, was that they were taking some of their truths that they knew about the world. So like things that the government's done in the past, right? So they know what kind of horrible things the government's done in the past. They also know like I don't know, like you could go to like the syphilis thing, right? Or MK Ultra, right? People's tendency to follow the herd, right? The mass majority, right? And so they took all these truths and then they added it up with like the only thing that was on their opinion side, right, was like small things like how the mRNA was like actually cut up and put into the vaccine. They didn't know that specifically, but they have these truths about the world, and they go, okay, well, I have these truths that I know are a fact, and they have these truths which are their opinions, and obviously they go with their truths, and that's why I think they didn't take the vaccine at as high of rates as you see normally, right? I think, though, that when it comes to my critique of like truth and capitalism, I think that this has a functional problem in society, and that's, I think, where I'm getting at. So I think you have something that happens. Well, I guess this isn't even like a big what would it be, revelation, but people who are in academics or in academia, especially people who have graduated with their bachelor's degree, they tend to think of themselves as an intelligent person, and usually and typically they are, and typically they also have a level of authority, right? So I think the problem with, and I guess maybe this focuses more on like academia, but I think that this can happen in a capitalist firm too. It's not exclusionary, is that you have intelligent people um, who know a lot of truths about the world and have a lot of opinions, right? They're overestimating the amount of truths they have, right? And then you have like a stupid person. And I say this as a stupid person, but I'm actually more talking about somebody who just knows less truths about the world. In hell, like I mean, they technically by our standards they are stupid, so it's whatever. I don't really care. But they know truths and then they have opinions. Now, I think the problem that happens in a firm or in society, and I think this is why you have a lot of people really disgruntled with society at the current moment, at least like the capitalist system, is that these people are in positions of authority and these people are not, usually, because if you're, going back to the tendency, I'm getting like sidetracked a little bit. Let's say this person knows everything there is to know about human nature, right? He knows exactly how to manipulate everyone, but he's just dumb in everything else. Like he doesn't know how the color of the sky is like a reflection of water. I actually don't even know if that's true. That there's probably like some evidence that that's not true. Regardless, um, that's in my opinion, Bubble. This guy's like knows everything about human nature, right? And then this guy is like a philosopher guy. Maybe he's an academic of like the political philosophy department, right? And he's read a lot of books. And here is his bubble of human nature. Well, if this guy argues for his version of human nature, this guy's going to intuitively start to get mad because he's going to realize that a lot of this guy's like beliefs about human nature are wrong. They're in his opinion bubble. They're not truths about the world. They're just his opinion. The problem in society comes from when there's outside observers. It's always outside observers. When outside observers start to look at this like argument, so this stupid person's starting to yell at the intelligent person and be like, "No, you're wrong. I know what's really going on." When these outside observers start to look at these people, who are they going to side with? I mean, you would side with the intelligent person, even though he's wrong. You would intuitively side with the intelligent person because, well, he's intelligent. You're not going to side with a stupid person. That sounds like a stupid idea, right? So I think that this can end up happening in a firm where somebody who has a degree, is intelligent, has made it, and knows a lot of truths about the world, has made it into a position of power, but maybe doesn't know the truths that they need to perform that task efficiently. And so you can have a bloat in a society where people who have a lot of degrees and a lot of knowledge don't have real world or practical knowledge in that like specific area, and it can lead to an inefficiency that leads to not good outcomes, right? Because if we're not having our decisions based on truth, then we're not having good outcomes, right? At least to some extent. Like I think there's a correlation here. Maybe not like a super strong causation, but definitely a correlation. And so that's like the idiots, right? Now to get into my opinions about socialism. So I think that socialists, right? And I addressed this last time. I don't know if it's here. Yeah, feeling sympathy, right? So socialists, I think, instead of basing their like worldview on competition and influence, like the amount of the influence they can gather in a society, they focus on how can we be spreading the most amount of good, the most amount of like calm, happiness, risk aversion. They want to lessen risk. They want to make risk minimized, right? And they want to do this because they have this goal that it leads to goodness, right? I think intuitively, those kind of virtues, they feel good, and so therefore we equate them with goodness. But I think there is a separation. And I think a lot of it has to do with the problem of the cave. So to come back to Plato's The Republic and the cave, I think the socialist is a little different from the capitalist, right? So the socialist, while I think most capitalists would make it to the first step, realizing that they're watching a TV screen, and make it to the first step, they stop at the first step because that is the pinnacle of influence, right? You being able to influence other people is the pinnacle, right? Of what you want as a capitalist, like an internalized capitalist, right? Socialists will see this and they'll get angry at it. And if they're smart, they'll keep going. The problem is that once the contemporary socialist makes it to the surface, they return to the cave, okay? And they return to the cave specifically for the reason Socrates outlines. They burn their eyes. See, socialism's root in risk aversion makes it so that this, as soon as they feel harm, they feel, and they, or sorry, not risk aversion, but harm reduction, right? As soon as they feel that harm, they want to return to the cave. Now, not all socialists do this, I don't think, but I think most, and especially a majority in contemporary capitalism, or like our contemporary society rather, return to the cave after burning their eyes because their main ideological goal is to reduce harm, right? It's to spread that goodness, feeling. And I think that's why sorry, I'm quickly reading my notes because I don't want to get off track. I don't think that was the whole point. But maybe it was. Yeah, so I think what ends up happening is that they not only crawl back to this guy, but they crawl back into the cave fully, because this is a very, very simple life, right? And even though they've discovered that they are being influenced by something external, they don't care. And they don't care because this is an easier life to live. Hi, this is William, post edit. I was going through, and I think I should clarify the reason that the socialists return to the cave and sit in the cave like happily is not because the life there is easier. It's not that they desire an easy life. It's that they desire intuitively a life of reduced harm. And in that cave where they're just staring at the projection of the fire being influenced, there is no risk of harm. They are safe there. So that is why they return to the cave. Not because it's easy, not because like there's not work to be done in the cave. It's because it's intuitively the least harmful place that they have experienced so far. It's easier to just stare at the screen and pretend that there isn't anybody influencing you rather than actually like pushing yourself out to stop these people from influencing you. And it's all rooted in risk aversion and the feelings of sympathy towards your other human being, right? I think another problem is that it's hard for socialists fundamentally to recognize deceptive people. I think a lot of the problems with socialism, and I think it's rooted in the fact that if you recognize that so many people are deceptive, especially to the rate that they are because we live in a capitalist system, you can't intuitively want to give people more power, right? If people are being deceptive, if people are deceiving you, if they're acting in bad faith, you can't want to give that individual more power. In fact, you would want the opposite. You would want to concentrate power into your own hands to stop other people from producing negative outcomes, right? And so I think it's in like the mental profitability is not the right word. The mental acumen? No. It's within their like mental vested interest to ignore deceptive people. And I think deceptive people really like this because a lot of deceptive people, what they'll do is to influence society, they will propagate good, like, sympathetic behaviors. I think this is why a lot of, like, the liberal left is very, like, easy to criticize for being, like, almost stupid in a way, right? It almost feels like the liberal left doesn't want to enact anything. But it's not that they don't want to enact anything. It's that all of those behaviors of them supporting like LGBTQ rights are just ways for them to deceive people who actually believe in those things into believing that the people at the top, that there's somebody working for them. Because if the socialists, right, or whatnot, the broad mass believe that there is a functional opposition with the ideological goals of making the world a better place, they will be placated. And that's exactly what the liberal left wants, because they want that influence. They are after the influence through deception, right? And so I think what ends up happening is that a lot of like leftist people, not only do they have a vested interest in being deceived, but deceptive people are very, very hard to root out. You have to get to know somebody to realize if they're being deceptive, unless you are very like unless you can read body language very well. This is something that like I've come to through the ability to read body language so well, to read facial expressions so well, to interpret the actions of somebody. I think I'll actually play a clip right here, but there is a clip of Jeremy Fragrance.
And the last one I don't talk so much about is Perry Ellis 360 Red. I love it, man. It's the dildo of the fragrance industry.
Who is a very interesting guy. But I watched it earlier, and I was thinking, like, as I was going through it, he talks about the use of like a vibrator, and then he instantly switches to masturbation. It's because his thought process, right? Even though he was like or he goes to like a very like interesting place. You can watch the video about him edging, but where he discusses it, not the video of him. Anyway, and you see if you follow him his thought process, or you try to interpret what his beliefs are, right? You can follow his thought process as a through line through that entire thing, even though it seemed, or his entire skit, even though it seems very disconnected.
I love it, man. It's the dildo of the fragrance industry. And yeah, it's not so funny actually. Still don't know how to talk about the topic of masturbating. It's difficult, man. I do it, but I don't come. And, you know, it's just like, if I can be that honest, but it's simply to boost my power type of vibe. All right, ultimately, of course, I want to have a girlfriend and a wife. Turning that girlfriend into a wife and have great kids. So that's Perry Ellis 360 Red.
And I think if you get good at it, you can recognize when deceptive people are being deceptive purely because you can start to recognize their deceptive thought processes. And I hate to say this, and it sounds cynical in a way, but most people who hold office jobs, that performance they put on is part of that deception, right? And it's ingrained in office culture, and you won't ever make it into office culture unless you are a deceptive person, uh, or you are like a paragon of goodness. But even then, usually those people have some kind of deceptive beliefs underneath, because you have to have those to play power dynamics against each other, right? So anyway, getting back to it, socialists they return to the cave because they they want risk aversion. They don't want to have harm in a society, and they want to reduce their own harm by proxy, right? And so it is easier to pretend that deceptive people don't exist and that harm is being reduced. I think that's why, and to like draw from Carl Jung, I think that's why the left has like a, and I'm sure anybody who is being honest recognizes this. The left has a lot of people with mental illness, right? Like a staggering number. And this is purely because I think there is a level of cognitive dissonance that you have to remain a socialist, um, by believing that people are good, yet recognizing how evil and deceptive the world is by the effects that come off of capitalism, right? You can't hold both in your head at the same time. And so that cognitive dissonance is exactly what Jung says creates mental illness, and I believe it does. I see it all the time, right? And so yeah, I think that really kind of wraps up my argument of socialism. Um, Maybe, I don't know. We're at 22 minutes. I can't believe that this video is longer than the first. I am so sorry. I hope you stuck through it. I hope it was good. I think though, if we're gonna talk about like solutions, I think socialists need to start getting out on the streets, and I think they need to stop deceiving themselves and letting deceptive people run the world if they want to enact the changes that they want to come about. Um, and so, yeah, I think that brings us to a close. I appreciate you watching. Again, I appreciate you watching the last video if you did. Um, I will be making other videos. Hopefully, I want to do a video every Monday. I know this one came out on a Tuesday. Uh, Things got in the way. Life doesn't ever stop. So I hope you have a good rest of the day, and I will see you soon.